Hello everyone, you're very welcome to our SUSI Information Event. My name is Brenda and I work in SUSI's Communications and Customer Services section. SUSI is Ireland's national awarding authority for both further and higher education grants, and we provide funding for approved courses at PLC, undergraduate and postgraduate level. We're now accepting applications for the upcoming 25-26 academic year. Today we're going to take a look at the eligibility criteria and help you understand if you might be eligible for funding. We'll then take a look at the application process and we'll walk you through how to make an application. We also have an expert team on hand to answer your questions. If you have any questions, do pop them into the Q&A box which you'll find at the top of your screen. Keep in mind, however, that your question may be published for the wider audience to view, so we ask that you don't include any personal details. Also bear in mind that your name is going to be published along with your question. If you don't want to include your name, you can select Anonymous. We're recording today's event and we will be publishing it on our YouTube channel for those who couldn't make it this evening. So again, just keep in mind that if your question is published, it, along with your name, will also appear in the recording. So let's get started. I'm now going to take you through today's presentation, which hopefully will answer some of our most frequently asked questions. So the first question that we get asked is, what exactly is the SUSI grant? The next question a lot of people ask us is, am I eligible and how do I find out if I'm eligible? Another one we get asked frequently is, how do I apply? Another one is, if I'm going to apply, what am I going to need to have to hand to make that application? And then finally, what happens to my application once I've submitted it? So we'll run through those questions now. So the first one, what is the SUSI grant? There's two components to the SUSI grant. There's your maintenance grant and there's also your fee grant. So we'll take a look at each one of those individually now. So the first one is a maintenance grant. What exactly is this? A student maintenance grant is a contribution towards a student's day-to-day living expenses while they're at college. And the maintenance grant is paid into your bank account in 9 monthly instalments over the course of the academic year. If you are awarded a maintenance grant, it's going to be paid at either the adjacent rate or the non-adjacent rate, and that depends on the distance from your home, so your permanent home address, to your college, and that's the campus of the college that you're attending. The adjacent rate is paid when your college is less than 30 kilometres from your normal residence, and the non-adjacent rate is paid when your college is 30 kilometres or more from your normal residence. So that's your maintenance grant. And then the other type of grant that's available is a fee grant. So a fee grant may cover all or part of your tuition fees, all or part of the student contribution, and also the cost of essential field trips. So the next thing that we're going to look at is funding types. So the types of grants, the types of courses that SUSI provide funding for. So we provide funding for courses from PLC level 5 right the way through undergraduate, all the way to postgraduate level 10, PhD or doctorate. So the next question you might be asking to yourself is, well, how do I know if I'm going to be eligible for SUSI funding? To be eligible for a grant, every student must meet the following eligibility criteria. First one is nationality. The next one is residency. The next one is you must be attending an approved course in an approved college. You must be progressing in your education. And then finally, the last one is the household income. So we're now going to take a closer look at each one of these criteria in turn. So the first one we're going to talk about is nationality. So to be eligible, you must be either an Irish, EU, EEA, UK or Swiss national, or have specific permission to remain. And detail of all the eligible permissions can be found on the nationality section of the SUSI website, which is susi.ie. The next thing that we're going to look at is residency. So to be eligible, you must have been ordinarily resident in either Ireland, the EU, the EEA, the UK or Switzerland for 3 of the last 5 years. So for the 25-26 academic year, which starts in September 25, this period is going to be from September 20 to August 2025. It doesn't have to be 3 consecutive years, but where you have been resident will be a factor in what type of funding you may be eligible for. If you've been resident in Ireland, you're known in SUSI terms as a student, and you may be eligible for both a maintenance and a fee grant, as long as you meet the rest of the eligibility criteria. If you've been resident outside of Ireland, but within the EU, EEA, UK or Switzerland, you're known in SUSI terms as a tuition student, and while you may be eligible for a fee grant, you're not going to be eligible for a maintenance grant. So that's your residency. The next one that we're going to look at is approved courses in approved colleges. So to be eligible, all students must be attending an approved course in an approved publicly funded institution. SUSI's legislation doesn't allow us to cover courses in private colleges, and the only part-time courses that are approved for funding are those that are listed on the approved courses section of the SUSI website. The next one that we're going to look at is progression in education. Now, I know a lot of you here today are Leaving Cert students, so this might not apply to you, but it's one of the eligibility criteria, so I'll explain a little bit about it. So as well as attending an approved course, you must also be progressing in your education. And what do we mean by that? We mean you must be attending a course that's at a higher level than any qualification that you may already hold. So for example, if you already hold a level 7 qualification and are hoping to attend a level 8 course, then you would be seen as progressing in your studies. However, if you already hold a level 7 and are looking to attend another level 7, then you wouldn't be progressing in your studies and therefore wouldn't be eligible for a grant. And this is irrespective of when and where you received that qualification and whether you had been awarded a grant for that course or not. You must also be attending a course that is at a higher level than any course that you have previously attended and in which you are progressing from one year to the next and not repeating any part of your course. SUSI's legislation doesn't allow us to fund for a repeat period of study. So, for example, if you attended year 1 of a course previously and have to repeat that year 1 for any reason, we can't fund you for that year 1 again. But once you progress into year 2, we can fund you for the remainder of your course. So that's the first 4 eligibility criteria, and now we'll just take a quick look at the household income. So to be eligible, a student's household income must fall under specific thresholds, which will be a factor in determining what type of funding an applicant may receive. Essentially, it's on a sliding scale. The higher the household income, the lower the rate of grant a student is going to be eligible for. And information on all of the income thresholds and the applicable grant award rates can be found in the income section of the SUSI website. So we'll just take a quick look at some of the income thresholds here. So where the household income for 2024 is under €115,000 for a family with less than 4 children, €126,040 for a family with 4 to 7 children, and €136,630 for a family with 8 or more children, and you're hoping to study at undergraduate level, you may be eligible for funding. And like I said there previously, all the income thresholds are available in the income section of the SUSI website. So the next question you might be asking is, so how does SUSI calculate the household income? Whose income is taken into consideration? That depends on what type of student you're classified as by SUSI. There's your dependent or mature dependent student, and then you have your independent student. If you're under 23, you're going to automatically be classed as a dependent student, and the income that's taken into consideration is that of you, the student, and that of your parents or court-appointed legal guardians. And when it comes to the parents, it's the one that you reside with that we take into consideration. If you're 23 or over and are living with your parents, then you're classed as a mature dependent student. And again, the income that's taken into consideration is that of you, the student, and that of your parents or legal guardians. If you're over 23 and have been living independently from your parents from the October prior to when you first enter further or higher education, then you can be classed as a mature independent student, and the income that's taken into consideration is yours and that of your spouse, civil partner or cohabitant. So if you're applying to SUSI for funding for the first time in the 25-26 academic year, it's your first time going to college and you're over 23, if you have been living independently from your parents from October 2024, you can be assessed as an independent student by us. And more information on applicant class can be found in the income section of the SUSI website. So that's whose income is taken into consideration. The next question you might be asking is, what income is considered? It's all gross income from the previous financial year. So for the 25-26 academic year, starting here in September 25, it's all income earned by all parties to the application between the 1st of January and the 31st of December 2024. So we'll just run through a few examples of the different types of income that we take into consideration. First one, probably as expected, is income from employment and private pensions. And when it comes to employment, it's full-time and part-time employment. The next example is income from self-employment or farming. So if anybody in your household, so either the student, parents, spouse, if you have income from either self-employment or if you're just self-assessed, it's your income from 2024 is taken into consideration from that type of income. The next one is social welfare payments. Now, some social welfare payments aren't included when we're calculating the income. These are known by SUSI as income disregards, and I'll give you some examples in a couple of slides. Another example of income that we take into consideration is rental income. So that's all income earned if you're renting a property out between the 1st of January and the 31st December 24. Another example of some incomes are income from savings and investments. Just a note there on income from savings and investments, it's the interest earned in 2024 that we take into consideration. So if you have a bank account with, it's not the balance of the bank account that's taken into consideration by us, it's just the interest earned. Another example of income is income from maintenance arrangements. Another one is lump sums. Just a note on lump sums is we don't take the full amount into consideration. So if you have either retired or been made redundant and have received a lump sum, we divide that down by the years that you worked in that employment. So for example, if somebody worked for 25 years and received a lump sum of €100,000 on retirement, we divide that 100,000 by the 25 years. So the portion that we consider would be just €4,000. Another example of income is income from gifts and inheritances. And just to note there on inheritances, it's not just cash inheritance that we take into consideration. We also take in the value of property. So if you inherit, say, for example, a house belonging to somebody, it's the value of that house that we take into consideration when calculating the income. So I mentioned there when I was talking about social welfare payments that not all income is included when calculating the total household. So some examples of income disregards are housing assistance payments or HAP, carers allowance, or work and family payment, previously known as family income supplement. And there's a list of all the disregarded payments that you can find that on the income page of the SUSI website. So for the next couple of slides, we're going to look at some things that can improve the rate a grant an applicant is eligible for. The first one is holiday earnings. Now, what exactly is holiday earnings? It's income from employment earned by the applicant outside of term time. So during the 2 weeks of Easter holidays, the summer holidays, June, July and August, and 2 weeks Christmas holidays. We can deduct up to a maximum of €8,424 from the total household income if it's going to result in the student receiving an improved rate of grant. So there's some criteria that you need to meet to be eligible to have holiday earnings deducted. First thing is that you must declare it when filling in your online application form. The first question that the student is going to be presented with when you're filling in the income section is question F1 is, did you have any income from employment in 2024? If you had income from a part-time, full-time job in 24, you would tick yes to that question. And once you tick yes, a little text box is going to pop up for you to pop in the amount that you earned in 2024 in that section. If you tick yes, once you tick yes to that, the next question you're going to be presented with is any of this in respect of holiday earnings. If you did work during those Easter, summer and Christmas holiday periods, just do a quick little calculation of the amount of that total income that you earned in 2024. What portion of it did you earn outside of term time? And pop that into the little box there beside that, yes, the holiday earnings. The next thing, the criteria that you must meet to have holiday earnings deducted is you must have been in education last year. And when we say you must have been in education last year, we're talking about school as well as college education. You don't have to have done a college course. You can have been in sixth year, working part-time during the holidays. We can make that deduction. If we are going to make that deduction, we will need evidence before making the deduction. So when an assessor looks at an application, they're going to calculate the total household income. And the first thing that they're going to ask themselves is there any deductions I can potentially make from this total income that will bring the income into a threshold that will get them an improved rate of grant? The first thing they will look for is holiday earnings. So they will look at the total income and they will look at the total amount of holiday earnings earned by the applicant. And they will calculate if by deducting the total amount declared from the entire total, if it's going to get them a better rate of grant, they will ask for evidence of the holiday earnings from the student. So you'll receive a checklist letter telling you exactly what you can send in to us for holiday earnings. You can either send in your payslips or you can download a form from the SUSI website, which this might be easier for you rather than trying to find all your payslips from last year. Download the form from the SUSI website, print it off and bring it into your employer, and that asks your employer for the dates that you worked and the gross amount that you earned during those time periods. They stamp it and sign it, send it in to us. Once we receive it, an assessor will look at the application, look at the amount of holiday earnings that your employer has certified, and if it results in a better rate of grant, they will deduct it and send you out a new award letter with the new improved rate of grant on it. So that's one thing that can get you a better rate of grant. And another thing is a relevant person. Now, you might be saying in layman's language, what exactly is a relevant person? If you have a sibling or a parent who is also going to be attending a full-time further higher education course or an approved part-time course at the same time as you, so in the 25-26 academic year, they're relevant because they may improve the rate of grant that you are eligible for. And the reason they may improve the rate of grant is because for every relevant person in the household, we can increase the income threshold by almost €5,000. If this applies to you, make sure to answer yes to question E2 on the application form when you're filling it in and give us their details. So if both of you are applying, you might have a set of twins, you might have a set of triplets, brothers and sisters, doesn't matter what the relationship is, as long as you're in the same household. If you are all applying, we will ask you all to give your siblings' details to us and make sure to tick yes to the question where we ask if you consent to us sharing data with both applications. The reason we ask you to do that is because we look at those applications then, they will all be looked at by the same assessor on the same day. And if there are any income documents, we'll say, for example, that we might need from your parents, we could share them with the 3, 4, whatever amount of applications there is, and then hopefully get your applications awarded quicker. So that's your relevant person. The next thing that we're going to look at is something called the special rate of grant. So you may have heard of this previously and you might be wondering what exactly it is. It's essentially a top up on the ordinary rate of maintenance grant. So to qualify for special rate, the student must meet certain eligibility criteria. First of all, the income must be under the special rate threshold. So for households with less than 4 dependent children, that income threshold is €27,400. The thresholds are going to differ for those with 4 or more dependent children, but you can find those thresholds in the income section of the SUSI website. But as well as the income being under that threshold, the income must also include income from an eligible long-term Department of Social Protection payment, and that payment somebody must have been in receipt of that payment on the 31st of December 2024. And there's a list of all the eligible special rate payments on the special rate page of the SUSI website, susi.ie. So you might have been looking at all those questions and think, I think I'm going to make my application. I think I might be eligible. But I wonder, is there any provision for if there has been any kind of change in circumstances? As I mentioned previously, for courses starting in September 2025, your application is going to be assessed on your gross income for 2024. However, if there has been a change of income after 2024, such as a reduction in income due to retirement, redundancy, change of employment, etc., you can ask to have your application assessed under a change in circumstances. So rather than SUSI assessing your application on the 2024 income, we can assess it on your reduced income, your current 2025 income. So you might be thinking to yourself, oh, that applies to me because my father retired there in March 2025. He no longer has his salary and his only income is going to be from the state pension. I wonder, will that make a difference? And I wonder, how do I let SUSI know about that? How you let us know is by simply the person who experienced the change, so in this case, the father, tick yes to question F16 on the application. It's the very last question on the application form. Once they tick yes to that question, a text box is going to pop up for them. They can enter in like a short description of the nature of the change. So in that case, the father would tick yes, and then in the little text box to say, I retired in March 2025. I no longer have any income from my employment, and my only income going forward is the state pension. That will help the assessor looking at your application to know whether or not they can reassess it under the change in circumstances and if it's going to get you the better rate of grant. We might need to request some supporting documents from you. If you've already submitted your application and we've already finalised the application, you may have been awarded a grant or you may have had your application refused for whatever reason, and you've had a change after this, you can request a review through your SUSI student portal. You just log into your SUSI account, click on the My Requests and follow the instructions on how to request a review in your application. So the change of circumstances, if it happens before the academic year or during the academic year, we can reassess your application. So that's your change in circumstances. So you might have listened to everything that I've talked about today and say, okay, I think I'm going to make my application. I wonder, is there any way of knowing before I make my application if I might be eligible for a maintenance or a fee grant? And the answer is yes. You can use SUSI's eligibility indicator. It's an online tool that doesn't guarantee anything, but it can help you to get an idea of your chances of being approved. You can find a link to the indicator on the homepage of the SUSI website, and it'll bring you through a list of questions about the course that you're going to do and your own circumstances. And the result that you get at the end will say you may or may not be eligible for a grant. So you may have gone through the indicator, got your result, and it says you may be eligible for a grant, and you're thinking, right, I am going to apply. I wonder, when can I apply? And the answer is now. SUSI opened for applications for the 25-26 academic year on the 3rd of April 2025, and we're now open for applications. So all applications are made online at susi.ie. You just need to click the Apply Login button that you can find in the top right-hand corner of every page of the SUSI website to begin the process. So you might be saying, right, that's great. I know I can apply now. I wonder, what do I need to make the application? Should I have some little notes to hand as to what I'm going to need? Here's your answer here. So the first thing is, for the applicant themselves, who is the one who makes the application, you can apply either with a verified MyGov ID or with your PPSN. You can choose, it doesn't matter. The next thing that we're going to ask you for is the PPSNs for parties to the application. So when we say parties to the application, for a dependent student, that will be their parents or legal guardians, and for an independent student, that will be their spouse, civil partner or cohabitant. If the other parties to the application aren't a resident in Ireland, you can skip over the field on the application form that asks for their PPSN, and the next one is just the national ID. You can just pop that in there. The next thing that we're going to ask you for is your 2024 income details, just an estimate of the income for every party to the application here. You don't need to worry about sending us in any income documents at this point in time. What we're going to ask you to do is just give us an estimate, because we have data sharing agreement links in with various government bodies, including Revenue and the Department of Social Protection. So we should be able to verify income right down to the last cent. You only need to worry about sending in income documents if we request them for you once we've looked at your application. So just an estimate, that's all we need. The next thing that we're going to need this probably applies to a lot of you here today who are probably Leaving Cert students, is your CAO registration number. So when you've done your CAO application, you would have got an 8-digit registration number. Pop that down on your SUSI application. If you're not applying to the CAO, don't worry about it. You can skip that question altogether. You can just leave that one blank. You may be applying for a PLC course, or you may be a mature student who's not gone through the CAO route, or you may be doing a postgraduate course. But if you are applying to the CAO, make sure to give us your registration number. The next thing that we're going to ask you for is your course details. When you're making your application, we will ask you for the course that you're doing. You may have a few in mind, but if you're applying to the CAO, whatever your first choice was on the CAO application, put that down on your SUSI application, and we'll assess you and hopefully award you with reference to that one. When the Leaving Cert results come out at the end of August, beginning of September, when you're doing your CAO registration, when you're doing your CAO application form, if you have ticked the optional Share Details with SUSI box in there, and you accept a place on a course that's different to the one on your SUSI application, you don't need to worry about letting SUSI know that you have changed your course details. Our data sharing agreement link with the CAO will allow us to see that you have updated your course details. Your application will pop back into one of our assessors queues. They will update your application with the course that you accepted a place on's details, and we'll send you out a new award letter. If you haven't applied to the CAO and you've changed your course details, it's a simple step of logging into your SUSI student portal, clicking on the My Courses tab at the top of the page and filling in a course change notification form there. The same thing will happen to your application. It will pop back into our assessors queues, and we'll update it with the correct course details, and we'll send you out a new award letter. And then finally, the last thing that we're going to ask you to have to hand is your AIR code. And the reason we ask you for your AIR code is because when we're calculating the distance between your home and the campus of the college that you're attending, we use the AIR codes to calculate that, and we want to make sure that we have awarded you the correct adjacent or non-adjacent rate of maintenance grant. So that's what you need to have to make your application. And the next question you might be asking yourself is, okay, so that's great. I've got all that to hand. How do I actually make my application? So step one, register your account. So like I mentioned there previously, you can use either a verified MyGov ID or a PPSN to register. The next step is complete the online application. You don't have to complete the application form in one sitting. You can pause it at any stage and go back to complete it later. So the student, might have filled in your details and now you moved on to your parent section and they might say, oh, I'm not sure of what my income was for last year. I might have to log into my revenue account to check that out. That's absolutely fine. You can pause your application at any time and go back to complete it at a later date. If you're stuck on any questions while completing the application form, you will see on the application form little pink help notes, a little circle with a question mark inside it. Click that and it will give you some help notes. But as well as that, on SUSI's website, we do have something called the application form guide. If you just pop that into the search box at the top of the page on SUSI, it will bring you to a guide where we have screenshots of what you should see on the application form. So you should be able to figure out how to fill in the application form. If you're still stuck, contact the support desk and one of the agents there will advise you. So that's completing your application form. And once you have completed the online application form, the next final step is to make sure that you submit your application online. Once you have submitted your application online, you should get an acknowledgement email from the SUSI support desk confirming that we have received your application, and that will also have a note of your SUSI application number. It will start with a W, the letter W, and typically will start with 2526 for the 25-26 academic year. Then there will be 8 digits unique to you that is your unique identifier for making your SUSI application. If you contact the SUSI support desk at any time via email or phone or through social media, the first question they're probably going to ask you is, what's your SUSI application number? So make sure to keep that number safe. So that's submitting your application online. So once you've submitted your application, you might be thinking to yourself, right, great, I've submitted it now. What's next? What happens to my application? Once you've submitted it, it's going to be queued for assessment by a member of SUSI's assessment team. Once they have finished their assessment, you're going to receive a letter advising you of the outcome of the application. So if we've determined that you are eligible for a grant, the award letter you receive will tell you the rate of grant you've been awarded, the course we have awarded you in respect of, and will also give you a breakdown of how we've calculated your income. If we've determined that you're not eligible for a grant for one or more reasons, the letter that you receive will tell you of the reason why and will also advise you of your right to appeal the decision. When you do receive a letter from us, you're going to get it in the post. Make sure to read the letter carefully as it contains important information regarding your grant. If you notice anything on the application that doesn't look quite right, you might be thinking, actually, I don't think that's the course that I'm doing. Contact the SUSI support desk and they will guide you on what to do next. As well as receiving the letter in the post, you're also going to get you'll be able to view a copy of it in your SUSI student portal. So if you lose the letter for whatever reason, you should be able to view it in your portal at any time. As well as the envelope containing the letter, you will also get a little booklet in that called Important Notes for Grant Applicants. Make sure to read that carefully because there's important information in that in relation to advising you on what to do if you have a relevant person in the household or you've experienced a change in circumstances or you may want to appeal the decision that you've been awarded. That important notes document will tell you what to do in those cases. It's also visible on the SUSI website as well. Just search for important notes and it will bring you to the page with all the details there. So that's if we are able to kind of finalise your application. In certain cases, we may need some supporting documents from you in order to be able to finalise the application. We'll send you a checklist letter requesting those documents. We'll tell you the documents that we need and we'll give you examples of what you can send in for that purpose. The letter is also going to tell you the deadline of when we need those documents from you, which will be 21 days from the date of that letter. If there's going to be any delay in you getting any of those documents to us, just contact the SUSI support desk and let us know that there's going to be a delay. And the contact details are on the website. So once we receive, if we have requested some documents from you and we've received them back from you, again, the same process will apply. It's going to be assessed and you'll either receive a letter telling you the outcome of the application or we might need some more documents from you. So that's kind of like the journey of your application. So we're coming towards the end of the presentation now. And what we're going to go through here just really quickly is some important tips for you. So first of all, when you've you should probably have done your CAO form by now. Just maybe pop back in and make sure that you have ticked the optional share details with SUSI button on the application. Apply early. We are now open for applications for the 25-26 academic year, and we expect to receive about 100,000 applications every year, and they're all assessed on a date received basis. So the earlier you get your application in, the earlier the assessors can have a look at it, and the earlier you'll get a letter telling you of the outcome and maybe be able to plan forward. We do have a priority closing date, which is the 10th of July 2025. We will remain open up until the end of October, maybe into the first week of November, but any applications that we receive on or before the 10th of July will be assessed first. I mentioned relevant persons earlier on there in the presentation. If you do have one of those in your application, make sure to tick yes to question E2 and give us their details because they may improve the rate of grant that you are awarded. The next thing is if you want to track your application's progress at any time, just log into your SUSI student portal and you'll be able to see a tracker there which will show you the stage that your application is at. And then finally, the last thing is if we have requested some supporting documents from you, make sure to return them complete and on time. And so what do we mean by complete? If we have requested more than one document from you, so we might have requested 2 or 3 documents from you and there might be one outstanding, and you might be waiting, say, from revenue or something to send you a document. Wait until you have them all together and send them in to us. But if there's going to be a delay, if it's going to be longer than the 21 days, just a quick contact at the support desk and let us know of the delay and a note will be added to your application in that regard. So that brings us to the end of today's presentation. There's loads of information there. And remember, all of this and more is available on the SUSI website, susi.ie. So that brings us to the end of today's event. The chat is now closed for questions. If you've already submitted a question, the team will get back to you this evening, so do bear with us. Remember, you can contact our support desk by phone, email and through our social media channels. And we're open Monday to Friday from 9 till 5:30. So before we go, I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening and thank everyone in SUSI who helped to make today's event happen. But for now, from me and the rest of the SUSI team, we wish you all the best in your studies and we look forward to hearing from you in the coming weeks and months. Goodbye for now.